Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us this evening or with me this evening to talk about birds. I have lots of favorite subjects, but birds certainly fall into that category of a favorite subject and something that I'm very interested in. The pictures on the screen that you're looking at right now, those are from John J. Audubon's Birds of America. Those are actually Audubon prints, and the Audubon Society allows anyone who wants to use those prints the permission to do so. In other words, they're not copyrighted or anything. So you will see throughout this presentation tonight quite a few of those Audubon prints pop up. Okay. 3 things all birds require: spring, summer, fall, and winter. 3 things: water, food, and shelter. That's it. You provide those 3 things and you're off to a good start for attracting birds to your yard. Now, the person who did the introduction mentioned the fact that my garden is a certified wildlife habitat. Let me tell you how you do that. All you have to do is go to the National Wildlife Federation's website, and they ask you to attest to the fact and give some examples of how you provide those 3 things: the water, the food, and the shelter. And if you do that, and of course, you would be honest about that, then you get the privilege of sending the National Wildlife Federation. When I got mine, it was $100. It may have gone up since then, but you got to admit, it's a nice plaque, and certainly contributing money to the National Wildlife Federation is a worthy cause, at least as far as I'm concerned. Okay, water. Water is essential for birds. They drink it and they bathe in it. You want to be sure and keep your bird baths clean. And especially in this hot weather, the water can get kind of nasty. So it's a good idea to change the water in your bird baths fairly regularly, maybe even every day. In the winter, and you can see that picture as you're looking there on the here, it was taken in winter. That, because you can see the snow and the ice on the pond in the back. That bird, I think, is flicker. It's possible that it's a red-headed woodpecker, but I really think it's a flicker. And it was getting a drink of water there on that cold winter day because the water is thawed in that heated bird bath. And if you look down here in the corner, you can see a goose strolling around looking for food, probably. Now, that's a picture taken in winter. On the other side of the screen is a picture of that same fountain taken in the spring or summer, I'm not sure which. And you can see that fountain can be used either way. It can be used as a heated fountain in winter, or it can be used as just a regular bird bath in the spring. I think I said fountain, I misspoke there. But anyway, 2 examples of the same bird bath and how it can be utilized both in winter and in summer. And you'll see sometimes I remember to take the extension cord down that runs the heater, but obviously when I took this picture, I didn't do it. The way I have it set up, it's on a timer. So the timer will go off at a certain time that I decide on in the evening. And then it will come on pretty early in the morning because birds are pretty early creatures. So I have it set so it comes on pretty early in the morning. So when the birds come around, they've got thawed water to drink, or liquid water, let me put it that way, to drink. Okay, I'm lucky enough to live in a house that backs up to a pond. And this pond gets a lot of different waterfowl. To be perfectly honest, mostly ducks but I also get geese, and sometimes maybe a few more geese than I would like to get, but they're elegant birds. They just are kind of messy. Herons come around, egrets, cranes, lots of different wild fowl, waterfowl. I'm having trouble getting that out. Mostly ducks there on the pond now, but you can see on the bank there are a few geese checking things out. This is my duck patio. This area was basically a mud hole. It didn't drain from the sprinkler system or from rain. It was just basically a mud hole, as I said. So I had some landscaping done, and the landscapers suggested that we turn this into what you see there, which we call the duck patio. And you can see there's a couple of containers there that the ducks get fed out of. And they get fed, especially in cooler weather, they get fed in the morning and the evening. When it's real hot, they may only get fed once a day because they just don't come around that much. But that's my duck patio. I will say, having mentioned the heat, I suspect that if you're someone who feeds birds, you may have noticed some decreased activity. I think the heat has kept the birds from coming around as much as they normally would in cool weather, but not to worry, because they'll be back when this dastardly heat finally lets up. This is a picture of just a few of the water features that I have in my yard. Again, really important to keep those water features clean. The feature on the far left with the cat is a moving water feature. It has a pump in it that recirculates the water. And if you can, that's a really good thing to incorporate in your yard, because birds like that moving water and will be very, very much attracted to it. Not that they won't be attracted to clean standing water, but they do like moving water. Also, I would suggest that, especially during mosquito season, that you utilize mosquito tablets in your bird baths. It won't hurt the birds at all. It's safe, and it keeps mosquitoes from using your water features as a place to breed new mosquitoes, which we probably don't want. Okay, that's covering water. Let's go to birdhouses now. Add birdhouses to your yard. The next sentence is a little out of sync for this time of year, because I've given this portions of this presentation before. And when I give it early in the year, I say, put your bird feeders up now or bird houses up now for early house hunters. Birds can be sitting on eggs in early spring, as early as April, and they will continue nesting through midsummer. So if you want birds to hatch little babies in your yard, then you need to consider getting those birdhouses up. Now, you may, and it's perfectly fine, to leave those birdhouses up over the winter, if in fact they're the kind of birdhouse that can stand winter weather. It's important to keep the houses clean. After birds have fledged, in other words, the babies have left, you need to get out there and clean out those birdhouses. Not particularly a pleasant job, but wear some gloves, wear a mask, get out there and clean it out so the next residents can come in. Keep your houses clean. Lots of times, wasps or hornets, whatever you call them, like to take up residence in birdhouses. This is something that you can do to dissuade that. Take some petroleum jelly, Vaseline, and apply a thin coating to the roof of the birdhouse. And when you do that, you create an environment where hornets or wasps can't attach themselves to the roof of your birdhouse, because that Vaseline keeps them from being able to latch on and build their nests in your birdhouse. And you probably don't want those kinds of nests in your birdhouse. Keep them clean. I mentioned that, you know, after in the spring, after the first fledglings fledge, clean them out so that a new family can move in or the same family can move back in. And then when winter comes around and the birds are probably not going to be using your birdhouses, at least they're not going to be using them as much, it's a good idea to clean them before winter sets out. Houses that look like the real thing, for example, a tree, work best at attracting birds. Probably that means you're going to look for a house that has a bark-like appearance on the outside. Also, the diameter of the house determines what bird will use the house. The bigger the diameter, the bigger bird that can get into the birdhouse. The smaller the diameter of the birdhouse, the hole, that means a smaller bird will be able to use the house. So you can do some research, decide what kind of birds you want into your birdhouses, and buy accordingly the house that has the size that you would like for your birds to use. Save the seeds. This is some pictures from my yard. On the right, or excuse me, on the left are some black-eyed no, I'm sorry, I misspoke there. On the left are some giant coneflowers. On the right, that mess is a bunch of black-eyed Susans. Both of those plants produce seed heads, and birds like to eat those seed heads. Now that coneflower, that giant coneflower, is in fact a native plant as far as Kansas is concerned. So you might be interested in maybe putting some of those in your yard. It's always a good idea to plant native plants and native grasses for a lot of reasons. They're beneficial to the environment, and they typically will attract more wildlife than other non-native types of plants. Some people consider the seeds off of a scenario like this as the primary source of food for birds, particularly in the fall and the winter. And that seed that you put into your bird feeders, they consider that to be supplemental feeding for your birds. You can reverse that and consider the seed that you put in your bird feeders as the primary source of food for your birds, and any seed like this from plants as supplemental feeding. So that's really, you know, depending on how you look at it, what's your primary source of food for your birds and what is supplemental food. Going along with that, I don't know if that black thing is across the top of the, I don't know. Anyway, build a brush pile. That's a misspelling there. Obviously that should be pile. Birds will use it for shelter, and other critters will use it for shelter too. You're primarily going to put it down because you want birds to use it, but rabbits, mice, other things will also use it. I'm going to go back. This is what you would consider to be a brush pile. Leave the leaves. Don't get in a hurry to get rid of your leaves in the fall. Leave them. Birds will forage for it in food, will forage in it for food. So don't be in a hurry to rake those leaves up. Now, come spring, if you've still got leaves, and you probably will have, if you're like me, you have lots of leaves. And I always have my nephews come over with their lawn mowing equipment and chop the leaves up real fine. And I either use it as mulch around my plants, or I put those back into the soil as to benefit the health of the soil. So that's a good thing to do with leaves. All right. I'm sorry, I have, can you tell me how to get rid of this black thing across the top of the screen? If it's doing this for the viewers as it is for me, you can't see all of my presentation, but we'll see if somebody can help me with that. All right. The top line, if you can't see it, says make your windows. And again, there's another misspelling I see. It shouldn't be widows, it should be windows. Make your windows safe. In other words, put your windows somewhere where perhaps birds will be less likely to run into it. The picture of the kitty there, that's Lulu. That's one of my rescue cats. Keep your cats inside. They are, in fact, cute little wildlife killers, not because they necessarily need something to eat, but that's just genetically what they do. And cats don't need to be outside. Cats are perfectly happy to live an indoor life. My cats don't go outside, and I recommend that you try to keep your cats indoor also, because they will kill birds. Again, not necessarily because they need something to eat, but because that's just genetically just part of their makeup. Reduce your lawn. A lawn doesn't offer food or shelter for anything except maybe some insects. It certainly doesn't do anything for birds. So to the extent you can reduce your lawn, that's something to consider for lots of purposes. For environmental purposes, it'll give you more room to plant shrubs and native plants or ornamental plants or whatever. I have reduced my lawn down to where I really can't reduce it anymore. I live in an HOA, so there are some restrictions about what I can and can't do. I mentioned plant native plants, and I'll mention that again. You can't go wrong with planting native plants. How easy is it to find native plants? Well, it's not particularly hard, and I'm going to recommend one source for you, and that's the Dick Arboretum in Heston, Kansas. They have a sale twice a year, once in the spring, I believe in April, and now they're getting ready to have one in September, where they sell every kind of native plants you can think of. Now, local nurseries will have native plants also, perhaps not to the extent that Dick does, but you can find native plants pretty readily. And also, there's all kinds of catalogs out there that you can subscribe to that deal primarily in native plants. Avoid pesticides. I don't use pesticides in my garden at all. Pesticides kill insects. Yeah, they do. But they kill good insects as well as bad insects. And when you kill the insects, what you do is reduce a food source for birds. Using pesticides also is bad for, in my opinion, the environment, and it's bad for bees. And we've got a real crisis situation with bees dying off. The next bullet point there is, as far as looking for bird-friendly coffee. I got that off of some of these bullet points I got from the Cornell lab, and that was one on there. And I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't fully understand it. Maybe some of you have been able to find bird-friendly coffee. I haven't. Okay, the next one, protect our planet from plastic. Oh, plastic. Plastic never goes away. Or if it does, it doesn't go away in a lifetime. Plastic is especially harmful to waterfowl. I'm not exactly sure what they're called, but those plastic contraptions that if you buy a 6-pack of pop, they're held together in these plastic things. And when you pull the pop out of the plastic retainer, I'll call it a retainer, you end up with all these small openings that's very easy for birds to get their heads through and get caught. And I do buy pop that has those plastic containers on it. So, and water too sometimes. What I do is when I have one of those plastic contraptions, I take a pair of scissors and I cut through all of the places where it could possibly be an avenue for a critter to get its head stuck in it. Again, plastic is especially harmful to waterfowl. So if you, even if you don't live around a pond, it's a good idea to be conscientious of how you take care of all plastic, including the kind that I was talking about that will hold together 6 packs of pop or water. Okay, next bullet point, watch birds and share what you see. There are several different sources that you can find where you can report to scientists about the birds that you see in your yard and the numbers of those birds that you see in your yard. And it's not a year-round thing. It's done basically, I think, based upon seasons. So if you would be interested in that, that's a very worthy thing to do. Reporting the birds that you see and the numbers that you see is essential because it helps scientists determine what birds are doing okay and what birds are not doing okay. The United States and Canada have lost 1 in 4 birds in the past 50 years. That's a lot. Baltimore Orioles, and we all love the pretty orange Baltimore Orioles, are down by 28% since 1970. That's a lot. Again, these figures and those comments, at least part of them, come from the Cornell lab. And it's a resource that I'm going to recommend at the end of the program, although you may want to go ahead and just make a note of it. A recent study by the National Audubon Society, which is looking at these bird counts over the past 30 years, has determined that climate change threatens 314 bird species within the next 65 years. 314 bird species will be affected by climate change within the next 65 years. So birds are in trouble, and we need to do what we can do on our part to help them do well. The tall grass prairie, you've probably heard of that. That's in the Flint Hills. One of the last prairies, tall grass prairies, or maybe the last one in the United States. There are 2 birds that live there. The western meadowlark, which is the state bird of Kansas, and the greater prairie chicken, and I think the lesser prairie chicken also, both live there. And both of those birds, it depends on what site you look at. They will either be classified as endangered birds or threatened birds. So those are 2 examples of birds that fall into that scary category here in Kansas. Feeders. Keep them clean. Use water with a 10% bleach solution. Consider the location where you put your feeders. Where can you see them? It's a lot more fun to have bird feeders out there if you can see what comes to your feeder to eat. I mentioned window danger, and that's always something to consider also. Another thing to consider when you're locating your feeders is if you have songbirds or whatever at your feeders eating and some predator comes around, then it's a good idea to have some plants or shrubs or even trees where your little birds, your songbirds can escape to or get some quick cover so they don't end up lunch or dinner for a predator. Consider the height of your feeders for ease of filling primarily. I mean, you don't want to have to drag out a stool or, God forbid, a stepladder or whatever to fill your bird feeders. That kind of takes away from the fun and convenience of having bird feeders. Also, and this, I don't know how many people would think about this, but in Kansas, probably most of us would. Consider the prevailing wind. My house is situated so that I get a lot of hot south wind. So my bird feeders, I try to put in a spot you can't avoid the wind completely, especially in Kansas, but put them somewhere where maybe that prevailing wind is not as much of a harm to your feeder or to the birds coming to feed as they might otherwise be. Now, prevailing winds can also obviously come from the north. Primarily winds from the south and the north. And of course, the north winds are going to be another thing to consider because they're obviously cold. But again, always take into consideration what it's going to take to fill your feeders. You want to make it as convenient as possible. I mentioned cleaning your feeders. Some feeders are easier to clean than others. Tube feeders, in my opinion, are not easy to clean. I'll give it my best shot for a while. And at some point in time, I just think that tube feeders sometimes become, they just get beyond the point in being able to clean. And as a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, I tossed a couple of tube feeders and went and bought some new ones. So do your best to clean them, but at some point in time, you may have to give up that battle. I'm going to recommend a source to you, and it's a source that you can go on the internet and find. It's Duncraft, D-U-N-C-R-A-F-T. They have a catalog, or you can go online and look them up. And if you're interested in exploring what kind of feeders are out there, this is an excellent place to go because they have just about everything you could think of. And you may not, I'm not necessarily saying that you should consider buying from them, although that's certainly fine, but you can use it as a resource. So you can determine what kind of a feeder you would like to have in your yard, or what kind of feeders you would like to have in your yard. And then certainly there are lots of local sources that you can go to then look and see if you can find the feeder that you want to buy. There's a list there on the screen of various types of bird feeders: tray, platform, hopper, suet, tube, stick-on window feeder. I've never had any luck with that, although I had a lady in the session that I gave on Tuesday who said she has had luck with stick-on window feeders. Little birds would come to the window and eat. The problem with that is she ended up with a mess on her windowsill from the seeds that they decided they didn't want, or kicked out of the feeder. Squirrel-proof feeder, caged feeder to exclude large birds, which is kind of the same thing as a squirrel-proof feeder, a nut feeder, and a fruit feeder. Okay, let's look at some of these. Obviously, the big picture is a feeder for Oreos, and there's an Oreo having some grape jelly. And then the bird also has the option of moving right over and having some orange. Oreos love fruit, and in this case, it's fruit from jelly and then fruit from an orange. In the top portion of the screen, that is a tray type of feeder. Obviously, it's an open feeder, so there may be times a year when you don't want to put that out because it has no protection. The bottom of that feeder is mesh. So in theory, at least, if there's seed in there and moisture comes in the form of rain or snow or whatever, the moisture will go through. But once bird seed gets wet, birds won't eat it. So, but it's there, and it's there are lots of birds that like to use these kinds of feeders. Down below, the blue one is, and that is blue. It's kind of faded, but that's a bluebird feeder. And the little container in the middle there is where you put your mealworms, because bluebirds like mealworms. I have never had a bluebird in my yard. I know a few people who say they have occasionally had one in the Wichita area. I think, I believe I am correct in believing that if you're going to have bluebirds, you're probably going to be more likely to get them if you're located south of Wichita. My mother, we had a farm where we have a farm, and my mother fed birds, and the farm is fairly close to the Oklahoma border. It's maybe, I don't know, it's several miles from the Oklahoma border, but nonetheless, it is in south central Kansas, and she would get bluebirds. I've never had them. Like I said, I'm not holding my breath thinking that I'm going to get them very soon anyway. But with climate change, you never know. It may change enough that it will attract bluebirds further north. Here's some more feeders. This one is a hopper type feeder with a roof. The seed is protected. This is probably a peanut feeder. This is a tube feeder. This is just another type of hanging feeder. And the one on the right is has a seed I can't think of the word I want to use, but anyway, it has a seed. It has some seed in it in a form, and that bird is I believe that's a downy woodpecker, and I'm basing that on the size of the bill that I can see. But we'll look at downy woodpeckers later and see how it's using its tail. It's using its tail to help balance itself against the feeder. It's grabbing on with its little feet, but it's also using its tail to balance itself. Okay. Here's just some more feeders, just examples. Again, Duncraft is the place that you can go if you want to do some research to decide what kind of a feeder you would like to purchase. All right, this is, I mentioned predators. This is a Cooper's hawk. And if you have feeders and you have little birds in your yard, you may very well see a Cooper's hawk every now and then. It's a pretty good sized hawk. I'd say 10, 12 inches tall. And they will hang around waiting to see if they can get some food. Again, this is why you have shrubbery or something around, so that birds that might be food for this Cooper's hawk can get away. And there you'll see there's a birdhouse hanging on my lattice fence. Okay, this hanging outside this window. Remember I said you want to have bird feeders where you can see them? Well, it's important for you to see them, but it's also important for your cats, if you have cats, to see them. This is Ash, and up here on the kitty tower is little Simon. And you can't see it, but there is a bird feeder hanging in front of that window. And the birds come to that all the time. So the birds or the cats, when they need some entertainment, will go in there and sit and watch the birds at that feeder. Now, on the other side of the screen, one thing particularly. This is a baffle that will keep primarily squirrels, but also maybe raccoons from climbing up that pole and getting to the bird feeder, if you can see that platform feeder there. Now, in truth of fact, in my yard, there's so many trees around that I guess this may serve some purpose, but basically if you're a squirrel and you want to get to that feeder, all you have to do is get on a tree limb and you can jump into it. But that's the purpose of a baffle. And it's something that you might consider if you want to try to keep your squirrels away from the bird feeders. And here's another water feature down below here. All right, this is a picture of the same bird feeder. This is in my yard. This is a combination of a hopper on the top and a platform feeder on the bottom. And you can see there's a little bird there. It's probably a sparrow getting some nutrition. Hopper feeders are the feeders that are going to have the largest capacity. If you're looking for something that has quite a capacity for holding seed, consider a hopper. And they will almost always come with some kind of a cover, which is good because it helps protect the seed. And these are fairly easy to clean. You can take a hose to them with a strong stream of water and clean them out. This is just another view of that same planter. I have a couple of these in the yard on the north side of my yard, and the birds really like them. Now, I mentioned the fact that birds run into windows. Lots of times they just knock themselves goofy. Sometimes, unfortunately, they don't live through it, but live through the strike. But this is an example of a window decal that you can put on your window, which in theory, at least, the birds will see and realize that, oh, wait a minute, that must be something solid. I can't fly through that. Again, these decals are easy to find. And if you do have windows that birds unfortunately run into, I would strongly recommend that you consider putting up some of these decals. You never know what a bird is going to want to eat out of. And this is my example of something that's kind of unique. And I'm not a photographer. I take pictures with my iPhone, so consider the source when we're looking at these pictures. But this is the same little feeder. You see a better picture of it over here. You can see a bird actually in there having some breakfast, lunch, or dinner, whatever. I don't know. My daughter accuses me of never throwing anything away. This is an example of something I didn't throw away. I kept it. I don't really know why I kept it, except it was kind of cute and I didn't want to throw it away. And I was rummaging around one day and I saw that and I thought, that might work as a cute little bird feeder. And sure enough, the birds really like it. especially the little ones, because they can get in there. The big birds can't get to it. It's got this cage around the top of it, which they can perch on, which also serves as a deterrent to bigger birds. And it's turned out to be just a lovely little bird feeder. Again, you know, sometimes you can use your imagination to come up with feeders that don't necessarily that you would necessarily get in a retail store. I have a picture here, though, I think in a little bit, that shows you that no matter how small a feeder is or how well protected you think it is, sometimes other creatures can get to it. This is just another, oh yeah, this is the picture. This is Lulu, and she's watching the bird feeder. And I don't know if you can tell it or not, but that's a squirrel. Squirrels can go anywhere. And this squirrel, despite the fact that there was other food around for it to eat, decided that it wanted to get into that little feeder. And by golly, it did it. Anyway, squirrels sometimes are the bane of some people, but anyway. This is two views of the same feeder. This is a peanut feeder for whole peanuts. And you can see a blue jay there having a snack. And then down here, another blue jay, maybe the same one, I don't know, waiting to get a peanut. Blue jays particularly, was particularly put up by me to feed blue jays, and it does. The blue jays love it. This is specifically a peanut feeder for whole peanuts, and they will come to it and they will stuff 2 or 3 peanuts down their gull, and then they will fly up into one of the cottonwood trees behind my house and eat it, and then maybe come back for some more. Now, they're not the only ones that like the peanut feeder. Grackles will come to it, and of course, squirrels like to eat out of it too. But, you know, as the person who did the introduction said, I kind of feed everything. If they need to eat, now I don't purposely feed everything, but if something needs to eat and I got something for it to eat, I'm pretty easy. I don't get too upset about the squirrels and the grackles coming to the peanut feeder. Okay, the blue jay. Beautiful, vibrant blue color. They are a pretty bird. Now, they are members of the Crovid family. The Crovid family also includes crows. Blue jays are very smart, like crows, you know, are very smart. Blue jays are very loud, and they'll let you know when they're around. I would suggest that you do the same as I do. If you want to attract blue jays and you want to feed them, get them their own peanut feeder. Now, other things may share it, but it's worth it to attract blue jays to your yard. Now they'll eat other stuff too, but they particularly like the whole peanuts. Blue jays often mate for life. They don't always, but they often do. And they're just pretty birds. They can, you know, some people consider them to be kind of obnoxious, but I think they're a very pretty bird, and I enjoy watching them. All right, again, apologize for my poor photography. These are pictures, well, yeah, these are pictures of cedar wax wings that came to my yard, and I can't remember if it was last winter or the winter before. They are eating berries off of a crabapple tree. Cedar waxwings love berries and fruit. They are what I call nomadic birds. You never know when they're going to show up. You never know where they're going to show up. They forage in flocks. In other words, you never see just 1 or 2 cedar waxwings. You'll see a whole flock of them. They'll come in, they'll maybe even clean up your tree of berries. But chances are, and my experience has been, they'll come one day, they'll feed, and then they'll leave and probably come back at least one more day, maybe two, depending upon how many berries you have for them to eat. They may come like 3 years in a row, and then maybe 3 years will go by and you don't see hide nor hair of them, and then they'll come back. You just never know when they're going to show up, but when they do, it's well worthwhile waiting on them. These are cedar waxwings, and see, that one's eating. There's nothing particularly colorful about a cedar waxwing, but to me, they are one of the most elegant birds there is. They're just, I mean, the eyeliner, the little yellow tip on the end of the tail, and just generally, I think they're just an absolutely elegant bird. Cedar waxwings. If you're lucky, you'll get them in your yard. Okay. I apologize for the fact that I can't get rid of that black strip along the top of the screen, but unfortunately, I don't know how to do it. All right. I will tell you what it says that maybe you can see or can't. I don't know. I can't see it. Some naturalists emphasize planting a diverse landscape of native plants and consider bird feeders as supplemental feeding. I mentioned that before. Let's look at some of these things that you can feed birds. Black oil sunflower seed. This is the seed that you can plant or you can put out for just about every bird. It has a high calorie count, which makes it really good to put out in the cold winter months. Cardinals love black oil sunflower seeds. Blue jays love it. Woodpeckers love it. The thing to remember about black oil sunflower seed is if you put out the black oil sunflower seed that's in the seed itself, or in the hull itself, the birds will, some of it will fall on the ground, and then you might have a nice little crop of volunteer sunflower plants coming up. That's one reason why I don't usually feed black oil sunflower seed in the summer months, but I do feed it in the winter. And I highly recommend that you do feed it in the winter because of the nutrition that is there for it. Now, I feed a lot of, and I don't even think I have this on my list, but I feed a lot of sunflower seed otherwise, and this is sunflower seed pieces that I feed throughout the spring and the summer and the fall months. That's, of course, where the hull has been removed and you're left with those little pieces of sunflower seeds like people like to munch on. Suet. Suet is generally considered a winter food, although they do have suet now that is supposed to last during the hot weather. Suet can have seeds and seeds in it. Suet can also have fruit in it, and suet can also have insects in it. So, you know, you may want to put out a variety of the different kinds of suet for your birds in the wintertime. Millet, that's that little bitty beige colored or yellowish covered seed. That's for ground feeders, birds that feed on the ground and don't like to feed out or don't feed out of feeders. Juncos and sparrows particularly like millet. Safflower seed, I call that an acquired taste. Safflower seed is supposed to be a seed that the bad birds and squirrels don't like. In other words, grackles and grackles don't like it, and squirrels don't like it, and but according to the experts, cardinals do like it. So if you have enough patience to put it out and wait for the cardinals to discover it, and for the grackles and the squirrels to decide they're not going to eat it, then more power to you. I don't have that kind of patience. I've tried it a couple of times and I've not followed through with it, but it is something to consider, especially if it can get kind of expensive feeding birds, and if you can make it work with the safflower seeds, then that may help with the expense of feeding your birds. Mealworms, bluebirds love mealworms. You can get mealworms alive or dried. I always get dried ones. I don't want to mess with having live mealworms in my refrigerator or trying to keep them alive long enough for the birds to eat them. There are birds besides bluebirds that like mealworms. Tufted titmouse. A tufted titmouse will eat a mealworm, and I have a picture of a tufted titmouse a little later. Wrens like them, nuthatches like them, and robins like mealworms. And this is something that you might want to consider for wintertime. Robins primarily are insect eaters. And during the winter, that becomes problematic if you have robins that hang around all winter or come back really, really early in the spring or stay around late in the fall. They may be really searching for something to eat. And if you throw out, and robins are ground feeders. If you throw out mealworms, then you've given them something to eat. And the other thing that you can do is throw out raisins, because again, robins do like fruit, and they'll eat those raisins that you throw out for them. Niger seed, goldfinches, and finches are the birds that primarily eat Niger seed. You have to watch Niger seed because it will go rancid very easily. So be judicious in how much you put out at one point at one time. Peanuts, whole in pieces. We discussed peanuts. Fruit for Oreos. Nectar for hummingbirds and Oreos. Fruit for the Oreos includes the oranges, like I showed you, and also the jelly. I don't know if this will show up or not. Anyway, grape jelly seems to be the kind of jelly that Oreos like. Now, they probably like other jelly, but I always put out grape jelly. You can buy grape jelly in the grocery store and put it out for them, but don't buy any grape jelly that has corn sugar in it. You want to be sure that your sugar is not based upon corn. So, and you can buy special jelly for your Oreos. The one I brought with me that I don't know how to show you what it looks like is called Birdberry jelly. And if you go anywhere that sells bird supplies, you can probably find that. And of course, you can make your own grape jelly. I tried it once and it was just too big a mess. I'll never do it again. Okay. Goldfinch. They are such pretty little birds, very vivid color, yellow with black accents. Only the males are colorful. The poor females miss out on it. And we have, I have lots and lots of goldfinches. I've had people tell me that they don't have any, but I have a lot of them. Now, the males are the colorful ones, but come wintertime, they'll lose that color and become more drab colored, excuse me, female finches, become more brownish drab colored, like the female goldfinches. This is a picture taken out of my kitchen window, and that is a feeder there where I've got 1, 2, at least 3 little goldfinches having a meal. Very, very pretty birds and pretty numerous. This is, you know, if a bird is threatened, I'll mention it, and goldfinches are not threatened. There's a lot of them around. Okay, everybody has to eat. This picture was taken a long time ago, but a couple of geese there on my lattice. I'm not sure what they were doing, probably just hanging out, but anyway. Robins, I talked about robins a little bit. Fruit, insects, mealworms, and all of those things can be used to supplement the robin's diet in the winter. 2 more, or another one of the more colorful birds around, the northern cardinal. Obviously, again, the colorful one is the male, and the less colorful one, let's put it that way, is the female. You will often see these two together. That's not unusual at all. Cardinals do mate for life. They hook up for life. They love sunflower seeds. They also love black oil sunflower seeds. They're pretty birds. They have a very pretty song. And the time of day that you're likely to see cardinals is either early in the morning or early in the evening. That's when they most likely are going to come around to your feeders. Beautiful birds, very colorful, very plentiful also. Here's one of my favorite little birds, Carolina wren. They are just delightful little birds. They have a wonderful little song. If you have them, they flit around all over your yard, here, there, everywhere. Carolina wrens also mate for life. The only criticism, I guess, if you can consider it a criticism, of the Carolina wren is where it builds its nest. And they build their nests in the most inconvenient spots. They love, well, I don't know, it just seems to be something that they really like to do. I have a hanging plant on my deck. It has a geranium and some other things in it. And one day, and this has been a while back, for whatever reason, God knows, maybe I was looking for dead leaves, I don't know, in the plant. I peeked in the hanging basket, and staring right back at me was a little Carolina wren. I'm sure it scared us both. I never tried never to bother it again. And when I water the plant, I water it on the side where I think the nest isn't, so I don't disturb it. They're just absolutely delightful little birds, and they are pretty little. Maybe they might be 5 inches. I doubt that they're that big. Now, we also have house wrens. House wrens are smaller than the Carolina wrens, and they are more of a brown color than the Carolina wrens. Carolina wrens have that kind of yellowish breast. I don't know if yellow is maybe too vibrant a description of the color of their breast, but house wrens are browner and they're smaller. And house wrens primarily are insect eaters. Carolina wrens, on the other hand, will come to your bird feeders and they'll eat sunflower seeds. All right, Orioles. Again, the male is the more colorful of the species. And I have a picture there of the male on the lower right-hand corner, and the female is the other picture of the Oriole. Again, they love jelly, grape jelly, particularly, I think. And they love fruit. So, buy an orange in the grocery store and put a nail in a tree and stick the orange on there, and you very well may get an Oriole to come and feast on it. Now, this is another story that relates to Orioles, and is a particular interest to me because I have 3 very large cottonwood trees across the back of my yard. And I've read in numerous sources where it says that Orioles have a particular affinity for cottonwood trees. So if you have cottonwood trees, you may very well have Orioles in your backyard. And I do. Now, I don't know if it's because of the food I put out for them, or if in fact that story about cottonwood trees is true. And they do gravitate towards cottonwood trees. All right, finches. We have lots and lots of finches, and sometimes, and I will readily admit this, sometimes it's difficult for me to tell certain finches from sparrows. The finch at the top is a house finch. Kind of nothing particularly colorful about it, has some interesting stripes on it. The more colorful finch on the bottom is a purple finch. And I guess that color is supposed to be purplish. I don't know, looks more reddish to me, but that is a purple finch. In between those two, and I don't have a picture of it, is a rosy finch. The rosy finch has more color than the house finch, but less color than the rosy finch. The house finch, or I don't know if I said that right, has more color than the house finch, but less color than the purple finch. The rosy finch has reddish color on it, but not to the extent that the purple finch does. And you are more likely to see a rosy finch than you are a purple finch, although you may get a purple finch in your yard. See where I am on time here. Okay, doing okay. Here we have a downy woodpecker on the left and a hairy woodpecker on the right. If you were to see a hairy woodpecker and a downy woodpecker side by side, which you probably never would, you could tell that there's a difference between the two. But when you don't have the benefit of seeing them side by side and seeing them separately, it may be difficult for you to tell the difference between the downy woodpecker and the hairy woodpecker. But I'm going to tell you how you can tell the difference. The hairy woodpecker, the woodpecker on the right, is much bigger than a downy woodpecker. And the telling feature about the hairy woodpecker, in addition to its size, is its beak. It has a really pretty long beak. Contrast that to the downy woodpecker. The downy woodpecker, and they both have that little red notch on their heads. The downy woodpecker is a much smaller woodpecker, and it has a much smaller bill or beak on it, which I think you can see the difference between the two. And actually, if you see them separately, which you're going to, it's pretty easy to see that one has a small bill, the other has a longer bill. The other thing about the downy woodpecker is that it is the smallest woodpecker in North America. And it can weigh less than an ounce. So it's a pretty small bird, but we do have quite a few of these, and I see them quite frequently in my yard. And that's how you can tell them apart. Primarily because of the size, but also the bill feature is the thing that really may be the feature that will help you distinguish them most. This is a red-bellied woodpecker. I don't know why it's called a red-bellied woodpecker, because it looks to me like most of the red is on its head. And I'm sure you would probably agree with that. But it is called a red-bellied woodpecker. And we do have these around. I see them at my feeders occasionally. There is a woodpecker, I don't have a picture of it, but there is a woodpecker that's called a red-headed woodpecker. And it actually, has a very bright, vibrant red head. Now, you see, I think maybe I've seen a red-headed woodpecker in my yard once, but where red-headed woodpeckers are more likely are going to be in areas where there's lots of trees. I wouldn't say a forest, but a lot of trees. And I live in an area where there's a creek pretty far behind my house. And occasionally I can hear the red-headed woodpecker pecking away at a tree. They make that much noise when they peck on trees. Okay, these little brown birds are brown thrushes. I've always called them brown thrushes, but I recently read when I was doing a little research that it's really wrong to call them a brown thrush. They are not brown thrushes. They are brown thrashers. So you can call them whatever you want to. Brown thrashers are primarily ground feeders. You don't see them on your feeders, but you'll see them darting in and out around the base of your feeders where some seed is always going to fall out. And they move very fast. They don't stick around very long. And you do well to catch a glimpse of them. But we do have them around here, and that, like I said, they're primarily a ground feeder. This is a white-bellied nuthatch. And these little birds are really cute to watch because when they're going down the trunk of a tree, they will go down head first. And that makes them, really interesting and fun to watch. This is a white-breasted nuthatch. There is also a red-breasted nuthatch. So there's difference in the color of their breast foliage, but that's about it. This is a mourning dove. My mother, you may be familiar with the cooing sound that a mourning dove makes. My mother always called them rain crows. I don't know why, but that's what she called them. I have a pair of mourning doves that come to one of my feeders, only one feeder, and they come in pairs, and they come in the evening, and they're always together, and then they will fly off after they have their meal. Sparrows. Oh my gosh. I have a really hard time distinguishing sparrows. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. And I was amazed to find out or to learn that we have up to 30 plus kinds of sparrows in Kansas. Now, not all of those sparrows are year-round residents. Some of them are migrants that pass through. And some of them are only, in one particular part of the state. But there are literally up to 30 plus kinds of sparrows in Kansas. So you could become an expert in house or in sparrows in Kansas if you wanted to learn all of those 30 species and how they live or don't live in Kansas, full-time or part-time, and where in Kansas that they live. Now, I have 4 pictures of sparrows. The one on the left is a house sparrow. Nothing very spectacular about a house sparrow, but we have a lot of them. The one on the left is a male house sparrow, whereas the one we looked at earlier is the female. And you can see, as per lots of birds, the male has more coloring than the female. This is a white-crowned sparrow, and they're pretty easy, fairly easy to distinguish because of the way the markings on their head. And the other one is a song sparrow. Sparrows have pretty little songs, and they sing along happily to serenade us when they're around. So those are just 4 species of sparrows that we have in Kansas. There are a lot more. So like I said, you could spend a lot of time researching and learning about all the sparrows in Kansas. This is a tufted titmouse. What a cute little gray bird with this little crest on the top of its head. It's very small. You can tell its color is primarily gray. And they come to feeders. They like sunflower seeds. And we have quite a few of them. I see them in my yard quite often. Tufted titmouse. This is a dark-eyed junco. Did you know that dark-eyed juncos are members of the sparrow family? I did not until I was doing a little research into some birds for this presentation. These are winter birds. You don't see these birds in Kansas or in your yard other than in the wintertime. And then they come around they're pretty common in our backyards during the winter. They are ground feeders. So whatever they eat, they're going to eat off the ground. If you have feeders where, like I do, where they're close to my deck or either on my deck, and seed will fall out of those feeders, they'll come on your deck and peck away at the seed. They're pretty little birds. Again, members of the sparrow family, and you only see them in the wintertime. This is just a quick, probably throwaway. I'd be better served to get rid of this, but I obviously don't mention all the birds that I could. And this is supposed to be representative of that, but it's not a very good representation. Okay. Some Audubon prints. This is a downy woodpecker on the left and a great blue heron on the right. This is a belted kingfisher on the left. If you live around a pond or water, you will be more likely to see a kingfisher because they like to eat little fish and other kinds of things. They can dive and get out of a pond. On the right is a great white heron. And then we have this blackbird. Who knows what it, people call them grackles, people call them crows, people call them blackbirds. Whatever you call them, we got lots of them. And on the right is a purple martin. Purple martins come around in, I think it's March when they usually come around. And if you've had a family of purple martins and you have a purple martin house, then those same birds are likely to come back year after year, or at least members of that same family are likely to come back year after year. Purple martin houses, they do best if it's close to water, and it has to be an open space. You can't have any trees that really interfere with their flying. It's really fun to watch them when they're flying and diving over water. you know, looking for birds to feed to their fledglings. The picture on the right is a picture of a barn swallow. If any of you were ever raised on a farm and you had a barn, you've likely seen the mud nest that the barn swallows make on barn rafters. And you could go in there. I remember going in as a kid and looking at those little nests, and the little baby bird swallows would be looking over the nest with their mouths wide open, waiting for something to eat. On the right, I think that's another picture of a heron, or at least its head. There's a picture. I put these Audubon prints in because I think they're really quite nice and quite interesting. And if you're interested, you can go onto that site and look at all the prints that are there. This is a bluebird. On the right is a attractive picture of a grackle. This is a Canadian goose. We have lots of Canadian geese around. They are a protected species. We'll talk about protected species in a minute. And on the right is a chirping sparrow. I think that's supposed to be a titmouse. I'm not sure. Hairy woodpecker and red-bellied woodpecker. House wrens on the right. And I want to talk a little bit about the passenger pigeon. Passenger pigeons are extinct. At one point in time, there were 3 to 5 billion passenger pigeons in this country. There are none now. All 3 to 5 billion are gone. The last passenger pigeon alive in this country was a passenger pigeon named Martha. Martha was approximately 29 years old when she died on September the 1st, 1914. So we've had no passenger pigeons for almost 100 years. Martha lived at the Cincinnati Zoo. I don't know about you, but when I think about that fact that we could have had all those birds, and for a century now we've had none, is very upsetting to me. What happened to the passenger pigeon is that they were hunted to extinction. They were hunted for their meat. People ate them. They were also hunted for their feathers that they would use in hats and things. And they also suffered from climate change. They needed habitat that the climate change interfered with, even going back as far as 100 years ago. Trees were cut down, the ground was tilled, I mean, all kinds of things, but primarily it was hunting that caused the passenger pigeon to go extinct. There were several efforts to try to save it, but nothing worked. Okay, I have enough time to finish what I want to do here. These are some sites that you may want to explore. These sites all, with the exception of the last one, will allow you to look at all kinds of birds and read all kinds of information about the birds. They all also have sound on their websites that allow you to hear what a blue jay sounds like, what a Carolina wren sounds like, which is fun. Also may help you identify a bird if you're sitting out on your deck and you hear the song, but you don't see the bird. So those are all good sites. There are probably more, but those are all ones that I'm familiar with and think are ones worth looking at. The last site there is a new one to me. I just ran across that. KansasBirdingTrail.com. And what they say about Kansas is that it has a lot of really good birding trails. And this site tells you about the trails that are available for birders to, hike on if you're into that, and observe birds along the trail. Now, I want to refer you also to the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. You will find a lot of information on there, not only about birds in Kansas, but also about amphibious species, mammals. So that's a site that's worth looking at, exploring a little bit. Then I want to mention two acts or laws that deal with birds. First of all, the Endangered Species Act, which I imagine most of you have heard of. This act covers over 1,000 species, or nearly all native birds in the United States. That's the Endangered Species Act. Then there is the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. This is an act that the United States is a part of that treaty, and so is Mexico, and so is Canada, and for the life of me, I can't remember what the other two countries are. But you can look that up very easily and find out what the other two countries are that I didn't mention. Now, house finch. Remember I mentioned the house finch back eons ago? The house finch, interestingly enough, is not protected under the Endangered Species Act. So it's not protected under a law that is unique to the United States. It is, however, protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So it's protected by that treaty as opposed to the specific Endangered Species Act. There are two birds that have absolutely no protection. And if we were in a live situation here, I would ask you to tell me what you think those two birds are, and I'll bet you would be able to do that. Starlings have no protection at all. And house sparrows have no protection at all. So, there are two species of birds hanging around out there that there are lots of, and they have no protection under the Endangered Species Act or the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So I think I've kept within my time parameters here. I actually have 3 minutes left, so I can try at least to answer some questions if you have any.
Hi, Karen. There was one question in the chat. One of the things that you talked about is using Vaseline on birdhouses to prevent wasps and hornets. And I think what we heard is that you put it on the roof of it. One of the
inside of the roof, right?
The inside of the roof?
Of the roof, because that's where the wasp or the hornet wants to attach to build its nest. Their nests hang down from your gutters or whatever, and they do the same thing with birdhouses.
Okay, so just the inside of the roof is specifically where to put
inside of the roof, and it doesn't need to be real heavy. Just light coating will work.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that. That's incredibly appreciated. There was a statement by Sandy that she bought some shade-grown coffee online from the Smithsonian a couple of years ago.
Oh, I'll bet so. I wonder if it was any good.
On that, she did not say. And then you did.
Well, that's interesting. That would make sense that you would find that there.
Yeah. And then you did mention a website, Duncraft. And I just wanted to make sure about the address. Was it www.duncraft.com?
No, just Google Duncraft.
Absolutely.
And you can find it. It's probably duncraft.com, but I couldn't swear to that. But just Google it, you'll find it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then another person just asked, can you repeat when is the best time to clean birdhouses?
Well, if you're going to leave them up over the winter, because birds may use the houses to overwinter in, I would clean them out before winter. But so, you know, they can have something clean to nest in. The other thing is early in the spring, before the birds want to build nests and raise babies, clean them out then. If you know, assuming that you didn't leave them out over the winter, or you did leave them out. And also, birds will have more than one group of babies. So when the first fledglings leave the nest, clean it out before the parent birds build a new nest to raise a new family in. And you may have to do that 2 or 3 times, depending on the birds and how often they raise babies.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Karen. We appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
Diana also added, she just wanted to share with everyone that she just got the Merlin Bird app and it was free and it was really good.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I haven't tried to use it, but I've heard it's really good. All these sites are free. I don't think you have to pay for any of them. I know you don't have to pay for Merlin or Audubon or Cornell. I don't think you have to pay for BirdNet, but I'm not 100% sure about that one. But usually they're free, or at least a version of them is free.
Okay. And Maria asked, can you repeat what is the name of the nursery in Heston, Kansas that has sales twice a year?
Dyck, D-Y-C-K.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And
I don't get any residuals from any of this in it either, so.
Always good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
I didn't know how to get rid of it.
And it looks like that is actually the end of our questions. So I'm going to go ahead and do the conclusion for us. Okay.
Sure.
So I want to thank everyone for participating in this evening's program, especially thank Karen Sanders West for her incredibly informative presentation. Really appreciate it. We have shared a link in the chat for a quick survey. As I indicated at the beginning, if you would take time to fill that out, we'd be incredibly appreciative. We want to make sure that our programs at the Wichita Public Library reflect your interests. And we really need your help to make sure that we do that. If you're interested in upcoming library programs, you can visit the events section of the Wichita Public Library website at wichitalibrary.org. We do have 3 more gardening programs. They're in person on Tuesdays and virtual on Thursdays. And then I just want to thank everyone again for your support of the Wichita Public Library, and especially Karen for your incredibly informative presentation. And this ends this evening's program. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.